Hi, I'm Emily from Life So Savory, and today I'm going to show you how to make your very own cozy sweater. Now, the great thing about this sewing pattern or sewing project is that you don't need a pattern. I'm going to show you how to make a cozy sweater from any shirt that you already have in your closet. So you can just grab any shirt, doesn't matter if it's short sleeve or long sleeve, and I'll show you how to turn it into a sweater. So I already have some really beautiful sweater knit here, and I have about 2 yards. You'll need about 1.5 yards for most women's shirts. I also have a long sleeve sweater here that I've already folded in half, and I'm going to use that as my guide. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut my fabric. If this makes you nervous, you can draw with a marker or pencil, a fabric safe one to begin with, but I'm just going to go ahead and cut it. I will trim a little bit off this neckline when I'm finished to account for this ribbing that's on there. So like I said, I'm leaving about an extra inch on the bottom to account for that. And on the sides, I'll leave just a narrow seam allowance. And I'm just cutting this. This is a pretty basic shape sweater, so I'm pretty much just following that curve. And then we fold over the sleeves, and we'll cut a straight line from here to here. Now, you may have sewn a raglan pattern before, and you say, well, the sleeve wasn't actually a straight line. It had a little curve in it. Technically, raglan patterns do have a little curve in that arm. However, when you're making sort of a loose fit like this one, we can get away with just making a straight line. So now we've cut the back of our shirt. We're gonna do that again for the front, although this time we're just gonna use this as the design, and that will be a lot easier. So let me just get my fabric refolded, and this time you'll be able to see how I folded it. Okay, so we're just folding it in half. You wanna make sure that the grain line is still lined up. You don't wanna skew your fabric when you fold it. And I'm gonna line up the hem again. Now, what I liked about that other one is that the front was a little bit shorter than the back. So when I cut this time, I will shorten the front just a tiny bit. I will also lower that front neckline so you get a little nice scoop in the front. But we'll first cut the basic shape, and then we'll lower both the front and the back. So let's just cut this out. Again, we're just making a straight line there for the arm, and we're getting away with that because this is going to be a loose fitting shirt. So like I said at the beginning, you need to find a shirt that fits you well. I would recommend finding a shirt that fits you well and is a little bit loose, like you would want a sweater. This isn't a tight fitting sweater. Okay, so now for our front, we're going to make 2 small edits. One, we're going to cut the neckline just a little bit lower. So I've just cut out a small curve. And 2, we're going to cut the bottom just a little bit shorter so that we have that. Now, we need to cut some sleeves. If the sleeve that you used was long sleeve, you can just go ahead and copy it like I am doing. Make sure you leave a little bit of hem allowance so that when you turn that under, your sleeves are not too short. And a little bit of seam allowance on the side so that you can sew it and not have it be too small. I'm just going to put a tiny clip right here and then lift up the sleeve, and we're just going to cut that straight line. Again, you can use a straight edge or a ruler if it makes you a little bit nervous to do this, just winging it. Okay, so then we have one sleeve, and we will cut another sleeve so that we have 2 sleeves. And then I'm just going to show you a couple tips for sewing this sweater together. The full instructions will be on the website if you need all the details. All right, so we're just placing our sleeve and cutting one more. Okay, we're going to move over to the serger to sew this. You can also do this on a regular sewing machine as long as you make sure that you're using a stretch stitch when you're sewing. If you just use a straight stitch, because this is stretch fabric, it will not work. So we are going to sew one sleeve to, this is either the front or the back. At this point, it doesn't even really matter. It's all the same. So I'm taking this angled edge of the sleeve and matching it with the angled edge of the sweater. And then we're gonna stitch those two together. You always wanna make sure that you put your right sides together of your fabric so that when you turn it right side out, you have the pattern or the right side of the fabric showing. And stitching this together. Now we would do the same thing on the other side. And you'll slowly begin putting your pattern together. Now, the one thing I did want to show you is, like every sweater, you need a neckline, and sometimes you even have cuffs on your sleeve. I've had a hard time getting a good cuff or a good neckline with sweater fabric. So one little trick that I like to use is to use rib knit while I'm doing that. So I was just going to add one little cuff here to the sleeve of my sweater and just show you how easy it is to blend a couple different types of fabrics. So if I say this is a sleeve cuff, right, you would want it double the width that you have, and you would fold it in half. And let's just sew that on the end of the sleeve and show you how nice it really does look. Even though this is sweater and this is rib knit, we can put these things together and still have a great result. So you want to make sure your cuff is a little bit shorter than the end of your sleeve. And then we place it together. This one is folded in half, right sides touching, and we'll sew and stretch as we go. So now I'd like to pull it a little bit. And of course you want to use fabric that is coordinating the fabric you've chosen for your sweater. But I really like the look of these two things together, and I found personally that the fit is really great. So you can see here on the end of my sweater how I have a really cute cuff, and you could do the same thing for your neckline with really great results. All right, let's keep putting this sweater together. So now we have our other pieces that we started sewing, and we've put one sleeve on the side panel, and let's put this sleeve on the other side. So again, making sure that we've matched the right sides of the fabric together, we're gonna line up those angled edges, and I always like starting at the same place on the garment. So I sewed the other one from the top down, so we'll sew this one the same. So that's starting at the neckline, sewing to the arm. Just keep those edges lined up. And it's a really easy sew because actually we're just sewing straight lines as I cut my fabric nice and straight. So now you can see we have a front with the two sleeves attached, and at this point we just take the other panel of fabric and attach it in the same way. So we take this, line up the tops, line up the underarms, and then we stitch again. I love sewing raglan style shirts because they are so easy to assemble and generally go together pretty fast. Because of how easy the sleeves are to put in, you really can adjust the size of this style shirt for your kids, yourself. If you wanted a looser fit or a tighter fit, you're not worried about the curves and the exact angles like you are with some other shirts. So it really is an easy way to adjust a shirt to make sure that it fits you well or fits whoever you're sewing for well. After we finish this line, we'll be able to see this starting to come together as a real shirt. So now we turn it right side out, and you can see that we have a front and a back and 2 sleeves. You can see how the front neckline is a little bit lower than the back. And so now you would just sew up the side seams and then you would hem it. And to hem this type of fabric, you can either finish it first with a serger and then turn it under and hem it with a zigzag or a knit stitch. You can also use a cover stitch machine with a double or a triple needle to give a nice hem on here. You do want to make sure that you use a stitch that has a little bit of stretch so that as this fabric wears and gives, you don't pop those stitches. So that's a way that you can make your own cozy sweater without a pattern.